The model is you have cops on the beat. The police headquarters are in Washington. There's a branch office in London. The poodle, as it's sometimes called. And that was the structure. Well, in 1979, the Shah fell. Israel's role increased, and relations got tighter. Meanwhile, Israel was starting to perform secondary services for the United States. So one of the ways of getting around congressional resolutions on South Africa for both the United States and Israel was to have it, and UK was to have Israel do it. There were congressional restrictions on Reagan on participating directly in the literal genocide that was going on in the Guatemalan highlands. Congress barred direct participation. So Israel was called in. They could do it. Not just Israel, Taiwan, a couple of others. It was kind of like a network, an international terror network that was established, of which Israel was a major part. They're good at this kind of thing. And so it increased. Intelligence relations with Israel are very close. Military relations are extremely close. The U.S. uses Israel even as a base for prepositioning weapons. They're right in the middle of the attack on Gaza. The U.S. was sending weapons to Israel, not for use in Gaza, but prepositioning them for further U.S. actions. Of course, for military industry, Israel's a bonanza. When the U.S. gives arms to Israel, military industry makes a ton of money. But even more than that, it's what's called, in marketing, a teaser. You sell advanced armaments to Israel, then Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf states come along and say, hey, we want some of that stuff too. So you sell them way more arms, but of course of lower quality, and they can't do anything with them anyway. So that's just a huge gift from the U.S. taxpayer to military industry. Intelligence, military, and in fact the same is true of high-tech industry altogether. High-tech industry is very supportive of Israel. There's a lot of, take a look at investment. There's high-tech investment going on in Israel, and it's increasing a lot. Intel, the major chip producer, is establishing a new plant, which is, according to their propaganda, is supposed to create a new generation of chips that will be used all over the world. It's in Israel. It's a good place for it. It's very closely tied to the United States. It's a highly inegalitarian society, but there's a wealthy sector, advanced, a lot of startups, with good training of educational, good education for the wealthier sectors, and they're very closely linked to the United States. In fact, they're so closely linked that some of Israeli military industry is actually transferring its facilities to the United States. Because they have better marketing opportunities if they operate here, and they can get supported more easily by the U.S. military funding. So it's an extremely tight relationship on all fronts. In contrast, what do the Palestinians offer the U.S.? Zero. They're just a nuisance. They're not wealthy. They're not powerful. Nobody likes them. The Arab states don't like them. They're worried about the fact that they stir up nationalism. So they're completely friendless and defenseless. That means they have no rights. It's just elementary principles of statecraft. If you take I don't know if courses like that are given, but if there's a serious course on international relations anywhere, it would say that rights depend on services. If you can serve the powerful, you have rights. If you can't serve the powerful, you have no rights. It's overwhelmingly the case. It's so overwhelming that it takes purposeful blindness not to see it. So here you have a rich, highly militarized, advanced country right on the periphery of the major oil regions of the world, closely linked to high-tech industry, to the military industry, intelligence, and so on. And in opposition, you have a group that's a pain in the neck. Okay, the policy almost flows reflexively. So I don't think it's a big problem. And of course, there are constituencies that support Israel. The biggest one by far is the Christian right. Huge constituency, big thing in the United States. In Canada, that's probably the main popular constituency. They happen to be extremely anti-Semitic, But that's kind of irrelevant. In fact, they're about as anti-Semitic as you can become. And if you look at their doctrines, their ideas is, well, there's going to be, Armageddon, and then all the souls rise to heaven, except for the Jews. Actually, a small number of them, I think 100,000 or so, are allowed, but the rest get wiped out. They go to eternal perdition. Hard to get more anti-Semitic than that. But they're strongly in support of Israeli policies, in part because it's supposed to lead to this. And this goes all the way up to people like George W. Bush. I mean, an unreported, but let's say one story about George W. Bush, which I knew a couple of years ago, but it sounded so crazy I didn't believe it, so I never published it. But it's since been confirmed, so now I can talk about it. Before the invasion of Iraq, Bush was, of course, trying to line up European support, and he met with the president of France, President Chirac. This is January 2003. He started talking to Chirac about a very obscure passage from the book of Ezekiel, which nobody understands. There's a passage referring to Gog and Magog. Nobody knows what that means. Are they people? Are they places? What are they? Whatever they are, they come down towards Israel, and that leads to all sorts of conflagrations. And at that point, the Christian evangelical doctrines take off. That's going to lead to Armageddon, and everybody's killed, the souls rise to heaven, and so on and so forth. So Bush started off to Chirac about this stuff, and Chirac hadn't the slightest idea what he was talking about. So he contacted the French Foreign Office, the Élysée. He explained to me what this maniac is raving about. And they didn't know either. So what they did is they approached a pretty well-known Belgian theologian who wrote a kind of a disquisition on the interpretation of this passage in Ezekiel and Christian right eschatology and so on and so forth. The way I found out is he sent it to me with a note saying this is what was going on. As I say, I couldn't believe it, so I never mentioned it. But I did mention it to an Australian researcher who looked into it, and it's true. It's reported in the French biographies of Chirac and the French documents. Okay, that's the President of the United States. It's not some guy off and preaching in Texas. Well, that's a big constituency, and Israel caters to it. They understand it. They have programs, in fact, which reach out to Christian evangelicals. I think they even have a journal directed to Christian evangelicals. They know perfectly well that they're anti-Semitic fanatics, but they're supporting Israeli policies. Well, that's a big constituency. There's the intellectual world, which since 1967, as I said, has had a love affair with Israel. That's why you get such good coverage. They basically write in the media and so on. There's the Jewish community, which has been, particularly since 1967, highly supportive, not before, and it's somewhat split. So sure, there are constituencies. There's no Palestinian constituency. I mean, you can build one up. It'll have to be a popular organization like Support for Other National Liberation Groups. Those are all factors.
I'd like to talk again about apartheid.
About what?
Apartheid.
Apartheid.
Yeah. Unlike the black South Africans, the Israeli Arabs or Israeli Palestinian, within the Israeli state, they have the right to go to university, they have the right to have sexual relationship with whoever they want.
Inside Israel.
They have the,
Are you talking about inside Israel?
So for the people who said it's not true.
Are you talking about Israel or the occupied territory?
No, I'm talking about Israel.
Israel.
Yeah,
well, that hasn't come up today, but if you want to bring it up, I'll be glad to bring it up.
Isn't the title Israel's Apartheid of this conference? It was written in big.
You're bringing up a new topic, an interesting topic, which hasn't been mentioned yet. What about Israel? Everything so far has been about the occupied territories.
Okay, but when you mention Israel's apartheid, it means in all Israel, within the original Israel.
Well, if you want to make that up,
it has to be a clear division.
You just ask a question and let him answer.
You're asking...
If people will let me ask the question, then I'll ask my question.
You're asking the question whether Israel itself is an apartheid state, right?
I'm questioning this because it's written in big, it's the week of Israel's apartheid. So I guess...
But the week of Israel apartheid has to do with what we're talking about, the occupied territories. Now, we can raise the question about Israel.
So you agree that within Israel...
I'm glad to talk about Israel.
Let me ask my question too. I didn't even ask my question.
Okay, ask your question.
Thank you. This is why I'm here.
So what is your question?
So thank you for letting me asking.
Well, I know what the question is, so
okay,
go ahead with it.
I got your comments.
Go ahead and say it. Everyone understands.
So do you agree with that within Israel there's absolutely no apartheid?
Well, that's incorrect, but let's go ahead.
So what do you think what is being apartheid laws or anything about it?
What goes on inside Israel? Okay, I understand.
That was my question. Thank you.